Hi, my name is Natasha Haley. I'm making this video for Tony and Isla at Shelbrook, just to give a bit of context here about some of the issues. And I'm going to start at the very beginning, so you'll hear bits from like before the first visit right up to where we are now. So I contacted a company online called Scottish Windows and Doors, who said they were doing a scheme called Help to Buy Windows, and that they could get you money off your windows. And I filled in a form. They referred me to who they called their booking department, which was actually clydebuilt. They're not the same company. It was just a sort of middleman sort of advertising company, I guess. Anyway, they sent someone out, and she came on an evening at around 8 p.m. I think was the appointment, and she arrived and parked around here somewhere near our house, and she was lovely. She came in, she paid a lot of attention to my son, who has autism and ADHD, and that was wonderful for him. Anyway, she quoted us for I think 8 windows. I'm going to show you something here. We later found out that we do not have 8 windows, we have 10. And according to clydebuilt, they charge per window, which meant that we should have paid more. But she had incorrectly, from the inside, thought this was one big window, but these are part of the wall, these 2 bits, and therefore structural work would have to be done to remove those. And we only found out at the survey. So yes, that's the first thing from the outside. I think the best way to run through this is problems in regards to the areas of the house, rather than a time frame, because then it'll be back and forth. And the other thing is, every window she quoted for did not have this bar at the bottom. This is a legal requirement in these houses, according to the surveyor. Again, we did not know that until the survey. So at this point, we have signed up. We've had a hard credit check on our file that we did not get told about, by the way. I happen to have studied the UK financial system, and mortgage advising and lending, accounting and everything. So I know about that. They didn't tell us up front. So we were quoted for every single window bar this one, not having these at the bottom, and according to the paperwork she filled in, every single window she quoted us was different than what we ended up getting because of legal requirements. And yes, this should have been 10 windows, but she thought it was one big one, marked it down as 8. The price was therefore wrong, and the type of windows that she put in wouldn't fit because she did not know the spacing between. The next issue happened on the day of visit 1. The workmen parked up out here, and as you can see, used this as a workstation. And I have a blood blister, so that's what that is. It's not something that I'm picking up. There is microplastics everywhere out here. Everywhere. It's awful, and as someone who's studying environmental studies, it really got to me when I figured that out. The next problem happened on visit 1, day 1. This is an access road. There is a public bin here. The council normally drive up here and empty that bin, and they came to do it on the day of the install. I remember because the men's van was here, the council van parked up over here. I heard it. I was out walking here, maybe on the school run or something, and I remember thinking that they sounded annoyed, and they sort of roll around their vehicle around, parked up there. Had to go and get that bin and bring it back to empty it. So it was emptied at some point during the day. Then later that evening, I took the dog a walk up here, as I always do, and found items of ours that had been in our garden here in that bin. So my partner's in forestry, which means he has a lot of tubes. He has removed them all recently, but they were all hung on here. on the shed, which is where I put hooks to try and organise things so my kids could have a safe place to play. So we had lots of these plastic tubes that go around trees, sometimes known as guards, vole guards, guards and canes, whatever. Anyway, that one of the tubes was in that bin, cut in strange ways, and there was also a planter lid. We have a planter that I bought for my son's birthday last year. This one had a lid on it. It was all smashed up and shoved beside the bin over there. From over here, when I was walking the dog, I noticed that all of the windows that were going to get installed the next day were sat here. Now this space wasn't clear like it is now. I have photos of all of this, that all the windows were left there and all the trims for the windows were left on top of, there was more barrels of water here. They were left on top overnight. Another thing I mentioned, I've sent via email pictures of the windows unfinished, even though I'd had a conversation with the woman who quoted us and the woman in the office called Andrina, who told me that at the end of every day the windows would be finished and each room would be usable. They were not. So I have a video that I took of all the problems. And a common theme you'll notice throughout is that I have done a lot of upgrading on the house, so it does not look like it did in that video. This room in the video has an orange carpet that was left by the last owner, and I think the walls are even blue, and at the top were a light colour, but I've painted it all. So the next issues that we came across on the first day, you'll see this in the video that I'll also send, was this area. So this wasn't sealed, and this hole is so big that I could put my fingers in it. I have pictures of my fingers inside these holes. I can't remember what other issues there were with this window, but as of right now, I'm still concerned that the hole wasn't filled first. It was just sealed. As you can see, the sealant doesn't always meet as well. It's just messy. Another thing mentioned is just the messiness of the silicone and the fact that it seems to have collected dirt when they put it on and can't get clean. Around these parts where they filled them as well with silicone or whatever, where it's silicone you can see that the paint doesn't stick, it just comes off, and they're not filled in a smooth, nice fashion. They're bumpy and messy, and it's really just upsetting to have picked a company that you think are going to give your house this really nice professional finish, to find out that they leave bumpy sort of holes that are unpaintable. This sill was agreed with John when John came, the engineer. He came after the first visit, after the 2 days were fully complete, and he agreed that we could have the ledges, the sills ripped out and pushed back so that they wouldn't protrude as far, because they are a lot bigger than they used to be, and there is a big gap on this area on some of them that we thought our son could get his hand into. Again, there's just silicone in places where it shouldn't be. Like, it really needs like a professional clean that we all have to pay for or do ourselves. So these parts have been caulked now so that we can paint them, which has worked quite well, as you can see. Like, this is the ones that are done. I've only done one coat, it could do with more to be proper, but this is a much more professional finish than where they've siliconed around it. The next thing, a lot of this paintwork was scratched. I've redone it and it's been scratched again with the works going on in the bathroom and the boiler, but this window is the one that has damage to the sort of actual window part that is not a frame. It's not easy to replace. This is the part that gets made in the factory, so it's like the window with the glass. The only sort of plastic on it is this permanent sort of plastic that holds the glass, and the lock or whatever. So you can see again this bar here at the top is where they've added extra plastic to cover parts that weren't like flush or fitting. You can see the corners. We had issues with these where they weren't even meeting, and like this corners were sticking right up in some areas. They fixed that now, but again, really messy silicone. In some places it's not even sealed. It's not sealing. You can see the darker parts in it. That's where there's gaps. John, the engineer who came, said that he wouldn't have done it this way that they've done it. He wouldn't silicone over the top, and it wouldn't look messy like this. He would have glued them underneath or glued them together here and put it on as a frame. Again, this bit, the paper was pulled up and there's silicone, which is why the paint cannot seal properly. It's just very messy. I think we're all good here, but they've filled this with some sort of sealant. That's where there was a gap. I don't remember if they moved this ledge back or not. This meets the wall pretty close, so they told us that they could not silicone or caulk this area. There was a cable that ran up here through this box, which we think is either an old electrical cable, maybe for a doorbell. They caulked over the top of it. I then needed to remove it because I wasn't we weren't sure if it was like safe. So when I removed the cable, it pulled all of the caulk and made a mess. You can see it's all like bumpy, messy. So as soon as we needed to do some repairs to this area or upgrades, the caulk that they put in, see there's some of the cable, I cut it up to here, but they basically just shoved it all over that. Again, dirty looking and all peeling. Like this is the other thing, all of the silicone's like peeling. I don't know if it should do that. Like I don't understand why it exists if it's just coming off. Like it shouldn't be so damaged. So it's the top wall window. So this one had to get changed because the height from the floor to the sill isn't enough for us to have windows that can fully open. This is a safety barrier. This bottom part can't move. So we were quoted for different windows. We signed all of our agreements and paid a fee for the survey, which was £349. We paid that on the belief of the windows that we agreed with the quote that night, and they all got changed on the survey day. Again, something that during the quote she did not know is that all of these windows have to open to be into the house, so you can clean your windows from the inside. So everything that she had told us about the windows was then incorrect because we had to change to get these ones that opened in here. Bathroom, this looked completely different at the time. I don't think it was even painted. Ignore the scratches, we've been doing work in here. So we had like almost all this kind of colour. This is the only thing that's the same, and the toilet. Toilet was there. There was not this. This has just been put up. It's a small wall just to cover up some of the tiles and be decorative. Same with this. Hide the pipes in the back. It was always the plan. We were thinking of having a shorter one of these and having the sink in front. So this is where the sink used to be, and it was almost like a curved basin with a pedestal, which is what they call the stem. The men have obviously sort of been at the window working and maybe knocked it. The pedestal that is like a U shape coming towards you on the day was turned and was almost like a backwards C. And that's when I stood back and realised that the sink was sitting at a tilt, the basin part of the sink. I've sent photos of that to Isla. So this windowsill is at about 90 high, 90 centimetres. Again, the sill comes out pretty far. you can see that they've just siliconed it where there was a gap. So there's a gap, sorry, I'm trying to get my finger here. It's hard to tell. I'm really sorry about the quality of this video, but basically our old sill must have came to around about here. So this is where the wall ends, if you know what I mean. So all of these sills, there's nothing in here, in this part, that curves around. So that's how you're able to get your fingers underneath. So there's nothing in there. So wherever the actual wall ends, is where the support for these windowsills ends. I have to let you know that when we were quoted for the windows, we were not told anything about the frames or the sills. And according to the engineer John, these are commonplace sills. They don't really talk to people about what they're going to look like because they're so common. That was his sort of words. It's so normal to get this that they don't really discuss it. I had said to him at that point, if I had known, I would not have chose these. I would have not progressed with the sale, and I would have possibly looked at going back to wood, having them replaced with wood. He said at that point, you know, if you want to do that, it'll be like $2,000 more. And I said, that's not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is when I was quoted, if I knew, I would have chose differently. So, we should have a sink, you know, essentially the sink should be flush with the wall, usually. And I think the standard height of a sink is 70 something, 5, 6, I'm not sure, it's something like that, which meant that every sink that we tried to look at after ours was broken, and the one that we had planned with the B&Q install would not fit. If you see, this would be under here, and therefore, you know, the sink usually be like this, and you'd have a tap at the back. The tap wouldn't fit because of the windowsill. And even, you know, having the sinks have to be up against something to be sealed. Sorry about the dirt in here. The workmen yesterday have got a little bit dirt over here when they've been washing their hands, and I've not had a chance to clean it yet. So this is transparent silicone that I've used to seal here. It looks really dirty just now, but it does not normally look that bad. Anyway, sinks need to be flush, therefore could not sit here where there is a lip without having some sort of compromised area. It would also then sit differently on its basin, vanity unit, sorry, this is the basin, this is the vanity unit. So we had to replan it. I bought a tap on the side of the sink and a tiny sink. This is 20 centimetres, 22 I think, and 40. This is really, really small. Plumbers would not do this when we asked because they said this is not suitable for having kids. They will splash everywhere with this kind of sink. And actually that's been the case, why we've had to now pull up the floor because so much water broke it, flooded this area. So this was a bath. You'll see it in the video anyway. The bath's side was open, so we could access the area here. I'm not sure if it'll be as noticeable, but I was standing back here one day and could see that the gap here was smaller than the gap here at the top. So this side of the frame goes a little bit like this. I measured it and confirmed that it does indeed tilt. There was other issues in here which have been resolved. Again, silicone. This has had something like 8 coats of this paint now, and I cannot get it to stick to the silicone that they've stuck all around. It's the same everywhere. You okay?
I was just wondering if I can go up and down with my rollerblades now.
Not right now. I'm making this little video to show the people of the problems. Maybe in a while. Why don't you get yourself some socks and trousers on? So anyway, that's one of the major issues in the bathroom, was this tilt. Again, window not made to measure, I believe, gap filled with foam and plastic stuck over the top to make it fit. Something else that I did bring up after the first visit, the original install, was just the way these meet looks weird. They're not, it's like a curved piece of plastic meets another curved piece of plastic. It doesn't really make sense to me, and because of the tilt you can see that this is a few millimeters. The more you follow it, the bigger it gets. It's the same kind of everywhere. I don't understand why that's not just a corner. These were not sealed in the beginning. There was big gaps between the frame and the wall. It is actually sealed at the top now, but it's sunk in behind because there seems to be gaps, which is apparently common with houses like this. Back to the hall window, actually, they've been a bit obsessed about how there's a dip here in the wall. But what I was trying to explain to them, and I got talked over repeatedly, was that from here, before they caulked this and I painted it, you could see, and you can still see actually, that this bit sits forward and therefore it's not flush to the wall, and you could see big blobs of silicone behind pushing it forward, and that was the problem. Kitchen, I'll go over quickly, but sorry, we've ripped out part of the flooring trying to get access to the pipes in the back. Again, it's just messy silicone everywhere. The major thing in here really is that they chipped the tile to make the window frames fit, shoved loads of silicone in it. It's siliconed over the earthen wire and also can't be painted because it's silicone. We were also told that all our blinds and stuff would still fit. Although I've made this one fit, it can't be centered and it's sitting to the side of it. And the other ones for other parts of the house that we had to be thrown out because they did not fit anymore. They were actually too big, I believe. This is the living room. There was a lot of issues in here in the beginning. They have fixed some of it. The major one that I would say we have right now is, well, it was a messy here. Again, it's not really flush. I've tried to fix it best I can with paint. This plastic bit, instead of cutting it to meet the wall, they filled it with silicone. That's something that was brought up after the first visit and was meant to be rectified but was not. This part snapped. This corner fell forward. I've managed to disguise it by putting the bracket for the curtains over. But this all cracked. It was hanging down, flopping off, all sort of shattered looking. I stuck an adhesive in there and pushed in a screw to hold it up while it dried. But you can see there's gaps, which is why the adhesive isn't sort of holding properly because it doesn't actually meet the wall very well. I'm trying to run through the rest of this very quickly because my kids are getting upset now. This is my son's room. This is the bed. The bed was here. They basically did not seal anything around the top because they said these things got in the way. The second visit they came and they sealed it. So they've moved this sill back, but this was an open space before. This bed, while it was here, when they needed access to this side, they've tried to move it and it's ended up with, I can't show you the other problems because we filled this room with stuff while we got the boiler replaced, but this is the main sort of thing that's going on with the bed, where it used to meet and the screws were tight, is like they've got gaps now from being moved. You can't really see very well, but the boards and stuff got chipped by them moving it. You can see it's a bit buckled. Messy silicone, really. My room, I don't think you're going to see this because I've got the curtains shut, but standing back from the window a couple of weeks or whatever after the visit, I noticed that this is actually squint. You can almost tell from here because the gaps change. But I did measure it. Oh, it sits like higher at one side than the other. You can't really tell from this close, and you're without like moving the cot and the beds and the curtains, you won't be able to see it. There's messy silicone. I don't know if you can see it, but it's just bits of silicone. Yep, big lumpy bit. There. Oh, on the bottom. Can't see it because it's too dark and my finger's huge. In my other son's room, although some of the problems were fixed, there was big holes made at the sides that they filled with silicone. I complained. They said they would fix it. They caulked over it, so it's now not flush. It sticks out. They've not bonded very well. Like if I sat here and pulled it, it would just pull off. The silicone that they did put on or whatever caulk collected loads of dirt. It's minging. But yeah, this hasn't bonded to each other. Could easily fall out. You can see the silicone is collecting a lot of dirt. It's really difficult to clean it because when you try to rub it, clean it, it pulls the silicone off. Same sort of issues here is like broken bits. Sorry, the focus is not good. And messy silicone all over the place. And it just, overall, it feels like maybe there's lots of areas where the plastic isn't sort of pushed back enough, and that's why it's just falling off. In this room, I also found some tools after the second visit. Something else. The first visit they came, they did their best to clean up, which is something we were told at quote, everything would be put back to where they found it and it would be tidy and clean and safe. After the first visit, they tried their best. It wasn't up to my standards, so I like re-hoovered and everything. After the second visit, they didn't even try. They were gone about 1 o'clock. The room was a complete mess, and I found tools like shoved in here near the TV. There was silicone. The second visit, they set up here in the hall. This is the rug that I was explaining. It was pretty expensive because of the size, but they set up here. Used this area to like saw, so there's dust and plastic all in the rug. Bits of silicone dropped off their guns. Silicone was on the door and the floor here, and this little rug. I've pulled most of it off, but I did notice that there is still some on there. There's a lot of other things I think that I'm probably forgetting, but these are the main ones. There was glue marks on the floor. I had to investigate that myself because after multiple times asking how to remove their glue from my wooden floors, I didn't get an answer, so I had to figure it out for myself. I spent a lot of time and effort getting that off. Yeah, that's it for now, I think. Hopefully this gives you a better idea of the sort of task that I've been up against after they leave.